This is video 6 of Metaphysics of Being. This is getting on to one of my favorite parts of the book, Zeno's paradoxes. I will go through them. Given time restraints of each video, I may have to break this into 2 separate ones, but I'll start off with Zeno's paradoxes. Zeno was one of the first to discover the paradoxes related to space and time, and ultimately motion as it relates to both of these. The following are a description of each of these paradoxes which he discovered. This was like 2,500 or 5,000 years ago. Again, Plato talked about this in Parmenides, and again it was back when a lot of the paradoxes of why, how did the universe begin, how is there change, all of these things were being thought about, and these paradoxes which Zeno came up with still have not been explained 2,500 years later, even given the advances we've had in mathematics and so forth. So the first one, the Achilles paradox, is summarized: you can never reach a moving object, since the leading object will have moved away every time the trailing object reaches the prior location of the leading object. So what this is, if you have Achilles, who is very fast, chasing a tortoise which is very slow, by the time Achilles reaches where the tortoise was prior, the tortoise will have moved ever so slightly forward, so that in an infinite regress he'll never metaphysically be able to catch the tortoise. So if the tortoise got up this far, by the time Achilles gets there, incrementally the tortoise has ever so slightly moved forward, and philosophically, metaphysically, you can say that the faster trailing object will never catch the slower leading object, because by the time this object gets to that location, an ever so slight amount of time will have to have had passed, and that leading object will have moved forward. And this paradox goes on into an infinite regress, and mathematically to this day this has not been explained away. In our real world, when we're chasing, the slower one just chases, or the faster Achilles would just catch up to the tortoise and pass him and move forward. But logically, mathematically, it should not be able to happen. We, again, incrementally just jump right over all of these problems and are able to do it in the real world. The next paradox is the dichotomy paradox. You can never reach a stationary point, since you will always have to travel 1/2 of the remaining distance prior to reaching the final destination. So on this one, logically, if I need to get to this point and I'm starting here, I have to reach a 1/2 point of that before I could ever reach the final location. So if I got to this point, now I need to reach this 1/2 point of that. Now I'm here, but before I can get to my final destination again, I have to reach this 1/2 point. This goes on into an infinite regress again, because any extension there, you would always have to reach that 1/2 point prior to getting to your location. Again, in the real world, we just go here to here to here to here to here, and right over the top of all these little infinities in between, and just get to our location. So that's just kind of an amazing thing that metaphysically it shouldn't be able to happen, but obviously in the real world we're able to jump over all of those infinities along the way. just to read a little bit of that part. Uh, Once you have established an initial location, it doesn't appear that you could have a first step either, since that would be 1 over infinity, and we talked about that before. Not only do you have to go to this half point or here, but metaphysically, what is that very first little incremental step? It's 1 over infinity. Um, but we don't do that in the real world. We just go right over the top and move forward. In our limited world, we must step on some random incremental unit of something to then be able to proceed onto the next incremental something, and so on. These space-time units must in some way be linked to the speed of light as the absolute speed limit of our perceived universe. Planck stated that his Planck units of time, space, and motion are the bottom limit of our reality. As we talked about with Euclid, mathematically he came up with a point, it had no extension. Planck in around 1900 came up and proved scientifically that there is a smallest unit to space and time, these Planck units of space and time that we operate in, and that below those points, time and space have no meaning. Time and space do not exist. They are incremental and move in incremental units of h. Below these limits, space and time have no meaning. Also, there is no in between. You can only land on actual allowed increments of reality. It is like money with no denominations in between. You can only land on pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, dollars, etc., with nothing in between. So by that, I'm just saying you can have big steps, small steps, whatever, but it has to be on all these allowable units of space-time reality is where we function. So it appears that it's impossible for there to be a first step, a last step, or a current step. We are here, there, and there, but there is no here, there, or there at their most fundamental levels. It is only through a limited approximation and averaging out of duration and extension that we can create a here, there, and there. These are relative space-time units created by the human mind or dictated by scientific reality, yet they are not real in a true absolute sense of being. Our true being is infinite, dimensionless, and outside of the concept of space-time. Every time we conceive of a relative here and now, we limit ourselves from our real, true nature of absolute being. By our own choosing, we limit ourselves. Many would say that we have to view the world in this way so that we can make sense of it. This is entirely my point. We feel that we have to view the world, and therefore we do view it as it relates to ourselves. We see it and understand it and conceptualize it in a relative way. Our true absolute self does not need to do this. It is this letting go process which can only produce true freedom. To conceive in a localized way is to limit. To conceive in a holistic way is unlimited. It is your true choice to be truly free or bounded by limits. In our world, we have to function within the limits of science and the way we operate in the world, but metaphysically, you could see how we're bound by that, we're limited by that, and metaphysically, to be truly free, you would have to escape those limits and the realities of those limits. So I'll end with that, and we'll get back to the other paradoxes after.